have that recording. So we're recording. So thank you for joining us today. I'm Kelley Senkowski. I work in eLearning. I'm instructional technology project specialist, and I'm here with Justin today. And what we do is, I'll let Justin, you can elaborate a little bit here, but what we do is really help faculty with just how to get their courses designed, how to use the tools, anything that we can do to help you with teaching, whether it's face-to-face, online. Even though a lot of what we do is online, pretty much most all of it can be applied to face-to-face as well. Then we have Vince too that's on our team, but I'll let Justin introduce himself first.
Yeah, so I think I've met most of you before, but yeah, Justin Melick, I'm an instructional designer, mostly working with it's gonna take me like a year to get this acronym right. The College of Education and Community Innovation is their new acronym, and the business school as well as engineering downtown. But I've worked across the university for 6.5 years now. And yeah, I'm just, really interested in ways, to help faculty create these more meaningful online experiences. I think pre-pandemic, we worked with a much smaller group of faculty, as you might assume. But even then, the number one thing we heard from feedback from faculty after working with us is just how much what they did online changed what they did in person. So, and ideally, it makes you a more efficient instructor. A lot of that stuff can be repurposed and used in a flipped manner in person. So that's what I'm most excited about. Hopefully at some point coming out of a pandemic and, being able to reuse that content in a way that complements your in-person experience.
Excellent. Vince, do you want to pop in?
Hi, how's everybody doing? Just checking in and participating this afternoon. Wanted to get of course, your perspectives on this essential topic, as well as hear what other faculty and what they're doing in their courses. So I'll be available and will certainly chime in if I find an appropriate moment. Thank you.
Perfect. Welcome to the other couple that just joined in, couple of people. So we're going to get rolling. We just did some brief intros, and we will have a recording as well at the end of this. So I am going to start the presentation. We've done our introductions. Justin and myself, Kelley, are going to be presenting this today, but we also are hoping for quite a bit of interaction at the end of what we have to say so that we can try to help you guys with anything that you need as well. So just brief overview, what we're going to be talking about today are the 4 types of participation and interaction. I realize many people have talked about 3. We're going to talk about the 4th, so 4 today. We're going to talk about instructor opportunities for participation and then get into some recommendations and ideas of how to build that into your course. So in course design, there are 5 key steps in the course design process. And I just want to focus on, we are actually today talking about the participation interaction piece of that design process and what that's going to look like. Just want to stick this slide in there briefly so that you A, are aware of this, and B, that you can see how it's applicable, what we're talking about today. We do at GVSU have a peer evaluation form, like a checklist to make sure that you have what you need in your courses. And so I just want to mention that what we're talking about today will hit 5 of those of the 7 different areas. Go, Justin.
All right, yeah. So the reason that we wanted to kind of bring this up, I had a few quick examples. So generically speaking, one of the problems that, I shouldn't say problem, but one of the things we saw early in the pandemic with a lot of instructors who never taught online before is when they were in Blackboard, they would just upload content. They would just upload a PowerPoint, or they'd upload a journal article or whatever it might be with no real context around it. And this is a big problem because, it'd be the equivalent of if you're in an in-person class, that you would be, just kind of showing up with, your slides printed out or whatever and not giving any context to the class. So that's important because you need to provide that context for a few reasons. First of all, it humanizes you. So, you're not just like this nameless, faceless thing behind the class that's just doing the grading. So, I think historically speaking, online learning has had I'll try to be polite and say maybe a rough history, or at least not a perfectly stellar, you know, shiny image in everybody's eyes. But I think one way we can really overcome that is just by, not creating these like nameless, faceless courses. You can be present in your course. You can, you can exist in, actually be known to your students. I think that's one way, your presence in the class is the reason you should do this. And the research also suggests that if you're doing this, and we'll talk about a few ways in which you can do this more practically, students are a lot more likely to reach out to you when they have questions. So that's the big reason around it. And the other thing too is that if you're reaching out to students and you're being present and you're being around in the course, and again, not just through text necessarily, but my previous role in the eLearning team, I really focused a lot on media-based experiences. So I always try to convince faculty to do like at least a video announcement a week so that they can see an actual face and get that nonverbal communication as a that you're used to having in your in-person classes. And it just allows you, again, just for students to feel more comfortable knowing that you're there. That kind of goes to my little, I share that's on there, the grocery store example. So I worked with an instructor, Rosemary, at the College of Ed. We use her a lot as an example. And she taught a class fully online. She never met the students in person over the summer or anything like that. And she was at the grocery store, and if somebody came up to her and said, "Hey, you were my instructor for EDI," I forget the number of the class. So we just talked about how great of an experience that class was, but they'd never met in person. But this student felt comfortable enough, after seeing her videos, she would do weekly video announcements. She would make a video for all the major assignments, kind of just explaining the assignment, just like you would in class. The student felt comfortable enough through those videos and through her presence in the course to essentially just come up to a stranger in the grocery store, which I think that's pretty amazing, and just kind of shows the power of being present in these courses. If you weren't present in the course, that student wouldn't feel comfortable enough even possibly to even email you a question about the course, let alone, come up to you in a strange environment like that. And then here we put on to the context guidance. That kind of goes back to my original point, just context around everything you're providing on Blackboard. Ideally, you shouldn't have anything in your Blackboard site that is just an attachment or a link with nothing else, no text around it or no other description around it. So I'm always, when I'm working with faculty and they're uploading readings or videos or whatever it might be, I'm always suggesting things like, well, why don't you put like 2 bullet points of questions to consider while reading this, while doing the reading or while watching the video, or even just a few sentences that provide some context around it. That's really important. It doesn't need to be, paragraphs and paragraphs of text, but just some level of context before the student clicks that video or downloads that PDF. And, because when they're doing that, they're really, basically, they're saying, okay, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to watch this thing, or I'm going to read this article. And it's better just to have a quick little synopsis there so they kind of know what they're getting into. But yeah, and then the last thing here is just, and this does depend, person to person, but ultimately, you're a lot of what students are paying for when they sign up for a class, and just being willing to share your expertise, and share whatever experience you might have with those students. That's something they're not going to get out of those classes, at other, I keep saying other online other online programs. I'm sure you couldn't imagine who I might be referring to, that are more generic. Your speciality, your expertise is really what makes a lot of this content. I think that's, being willing to share that in whichever way is most comfortable with you is really valuable, and humanizes you to the course.
Excellent. So we're going to talk about the 4 types of participation and interaction. So Justin had mentioned a couple examples of why do we want to do this. We want to add your value back in. You are valuable, your background, your experiences in your field, your stories. So the 4 types we're going to talk about today, well, 3 of the 4. We're going to talk about the faculty-student interaction, which is the intentional social presence piece that we're talking through as far as ways you can do that and why again. The student-to-student interactions and the student-to-community interactions, which may be new to some of you. We are assuming the students of content. We're not going to talk about that one today because if they're doing the other three, they're doing the fourth. They're in your content if they're doing the other ones. And that's kind of a given for us. So we're going to talk about the other three mainly today. So faculty to student interaction. We're going to start with being intentional. So in other words, social presence and interaction with your students is not going to happen on its own. It's not sitting back waiting for the student to ask if they have a question. It's putting yourself out there to become a presence for them, even if you're online. And this works whether you're online, hybrid, whatever the combination may be. But a big one that I've seen in student surveys that was in a neighboring university was response, honestly. So these are separated the two bullet points because they need a response, period. And we've done some surveys on seeing that students haven't gotten responses sometimes. The other one is response time. So they may be asking you a question about where to find something for their assignment that's due that week, or something they're writing about our topic. And if they don't get a response till a week later, then they've either missed it or lost the point. So that builds their stress and frustration. So it's response time, be responsive. But as Justin was mentioning, the weekly announcement piece, this is really great if you can do even a 1-minute video. That's your face in front of the class saying, this is what we're going to talk about this week. It's the same as if you're online, or even if you're using the Blackboard course with your face-to-face course, it's still an introduction of this is what we're going to do on today or this week, online this week, or in the next couple of days of our class this week. Whatever that is, to just say, this is what we're looking at and this is what's going to be due. It's the same thing you would say at the front of the classroom, as a quick synopsis to the students. Same information. But non-participation check-ins. So if they're not participating, send them an email. Hey, I haven't seen you in the discussion posts or in class or in our synchronous chats. So is everything going okay? Do you have any questions on the course? Those kinds of things. You can find out amazing information that way. Sometimes it's just oh gosh, I'm so glad you contacted me because I just needed to get re-engaged again or something. Other times,
do you mind if I
help? Yeah, go ahead.
So I have a quick example of that exact thing. I worked with an instructor in Stats 215 who she gave students extra credit, and I'm using big air quotes here, because when you actually did the math, it really wasn't a significant amount of points, but students love when they see the term extra credit. If students would email her once a week just to check in, so they could have a legitimate question, or if they didn't have a legitimate question every week, she would have just some fun thing to answer, what was your name of your first pet or something like that. It doesn't matter. So just a way to make students, give them an incentive to actually contact. So then when they did really have a question, they would feel comfortable, which I thought that was a great system. Though maybe, depending on your number of students, that is maybe more or less possible. But I thought that was a pretty cool idea I've seen before.
That was a perfect segue into the next bullet point. Thank you, Justin. So if you do have a lot of students in the class, you can have a course questions forum or thread in your discussion posts. So they can post questions there and they can answer each other. That gets your student to student interaction. Maybe someone's already asked the question they need. That also gets you in there to answer the question for everyone. But that leads me into the last bullet point is relevant tips in their field, conferences, resources. So if they're depending on what level, undergrad or grad, whatever you're teaching, they may not even be in the field yet. They don't even know these opportunities. They don't get any notifications on if there's a conference in the area or if there's a resource online. So any of that stuff really makes their learning authentic and relevant. You're really chiming in then to not just the social presence piece, because that's definitely there, but also the expertise piece, but also that piece of just knowledge and really getting them into their field or whatever it is that they're learning in your course. The next is the faculty-student interaction piece, where we're just going to expand a little bit more. Again, we talked about it, it's intentional, engage. But a big one that I saw on the surveys, student surveys in a neighboring institution, was feedback on every assignment. So a story on that is a student was really disappointed. Him and his partner really worked hard on whatever the project was, final project. They put a lot of time in there, research, they got their assignment back or their project back, and it was an A. and they were really disappointed, not with the grade, but they don't know what they did right. So they need to know what they need to improve upon, but they also need to know what did they, did they nail that concept? Did they do a good job? Did they, go out of the box with their thinking and really come up with something creative? So it's just the feedback. So assignments, every assignment, however big or small, just some kind of feedback. Are they on the right track? Is there something they should improve upon for their next submission? Another piece is online synchronous chat. So even if you're teaching online completely, I still recommend having 1 or 2 a semester, whether it's midterm or the second week so no one gets lost, and maybe right before your final project, just something where they have a forum to ask questions. So what I've done with my courses in the past that I've taught online, and this can be whether it's hybrid or whatever combination you want, I have had them get some points. They have to attend one of the 2. So schedule wise, I would do them different days and times so they could work it out. But I would give them points for that just to motivate them to come. But that's when we talked about how things were going. What did I see in the recent assignments? Maybe there's something that everyone didn't get good at, didn't do great on a concept, and I can reiterate that or re-explain that. And then talking about the final projects, upcoming things, but they can then get their questions answered right then. Because especially if you do an online course, you don't want them falling behind from the beginning because they don't know where to find things in your course. Participating in all your discussion forums is key too for your presence and your teaching. And this is also in the discussion forums where you can redirect them to another published article or a journal entry that somebody did that applies to whatever your discussion topics are. Now, I'm not recommending best practices isn't going in and answering every student's comments and posts in your discussion board. Best practices is going to be check in a few times, 2 or 3 days a week, so that you have a presence you can redirect if necessary. I was talking to one faculty member where he would watch the students get off topic, but didn't feel like he should be able to butt in. So they would completely misunderstand a concept, and he didn't feel like it's his place to butt in because it was a student forum. But you are supposed to be in the discussion post, but not all the time, because you want to encourage the student-to-student interaction too. It's kind of like the classroom. Everybody's inputting on that. So it is good to at least be in there a couple times a week for sure. And also so you can see what the topics are with your students. Video discussion responses. This I want to put in there because you can do feedback in Blackboard on any assignment they do. You can do a quick video feedback because sometimes it comes across a lot better if someone is saying, hey, great job on that paper. Next time, look out for these things. We have tutors that you can send it to even online if you want someone to read it in advance, but good concept check or whatever. Sounds way different than if you type something that says, good job, make sure you check it with the tutor center and the writing center first. It's just a different delivery if you do it yourself, if you can do it either with a voice or with a video. And, that's not something you have to do every time, but it's nice to pop in on a couple of your assignment submission grading if you had something like that where you could give a video response. It's also way faster than writing, by the way, if you just say it. So it is a time.
So one of the things
yes,
I'd like to add to that is
please.
that I didn't want to do video recordings with each paper that I returned, but I found that just doing voice recordings, the students are really receptive to that. And I try to set a timer for 5 minutes so that I don't talk over that. And I try to imagine that I'm actually having like a conference with the student. And I will go back and forth in my mind, of the different points that I want to bring forward with the papers. So I give back, annotations down the side, and then I give that recording. And a lot of my students really like that recording. So, I guess just as something to think about, if you don't want to be on video every single time, you could just do a voice recording too.
Absolutely. And
I
I'm
like
guessing it was time saver. Go ahead, Justin.
So I like what you just said, Julie, about imagining that you're in a conference with a student. Like that to me is the ideal. Like the whole idea of points-based grading is kind of problematic to me, but it's kind of the system we're in. So, I guess like in my perfect world, that type of like one-on-one mentoring type of thing is the ideal. And I think what you just described is a way to at least move in that direction. So
Yes.
I really like that a lot.
Excellent example. And the last point here is just an overview video instruction of each week's module. So if you have a hybrid or an online course that you're teaching, definitely, you know, a 1 or 2 minute introduction. You can even use the same one and send it out in your announcements if you want, but definitely just, it's your presence again. And you just envision you're in front of the class when they come in each week, you're going to say, hey, this is what we're going to talk about. It's just that verbal introduction of what you're going to go through. And I've been an online student as well. And so I can tell you from a student perspective, me reading a list of things that are due or that I have to do that week is way more overwhelming than the person standing up there and saying, oh, you need to read that. So then you can do the discussion post. And then the paragraph you're going to write on this, only it has to do with this. And this is why. It's like, oh, okay, that doesn't sound like quite as many things as a long list that I had to do. So it's just nice for them to hear it from you as well, like you would stand in front of the course. So those are ways to initiate that faculty-student interaction and that social presence with them. These are a couple other ways that you can do that for designing your course. How do you put that in there? But you can use scenarios from your field of study. So if you're thinking about what can I do for discussion posts or an assignment, you can actually, whether it's voice, video, whether you find these online or YouTube snippets, whatever, you can create a couple different, 2 or 3 different scenarios and ask them which one would they choose, how would they handle that and why. And that can be discussion posts. And then you can be in there saying, oh, that's a good idea. Maybe you could have tried this. But it's scenarios from the field of study, things they wouldn't have thought about. You know, they can't go out into wherever this environment is right now for their assignment necessarily, but you can kind of bring a piece of that in. And that's, again, sharing your experiences. And it doesn't have to be a long scenario. It could be something short. How would you handle this? And how do you think you'd handle this in the field based on the reading or whatever, which is a lot more engaging to them and then commenting on each other's than just answering, you know, chapter questions or something in a discussion board. Another one you can do is game-based learning. That sounds really scary to a lot of people, but it's really not. It's like a 360 image, which we can do here in digital media. We can find them for you or take them for you. You just need to contact us. We can get that taken care of for you. It's a 360 image. It can probably even build it for you in the Hunter is in the technology showcase. It could do that. They can build this for you. So what I'm referring to is if you have a 360 image and you have points, they can watch a video of you, a couple-minute video on a topic. They can look at a PDF. They can look at a PowerPoint. It's just more engaging activities, and whether you do rewards or not, it's just you can do escape rooms this way, just using a picture and putting points in there of your desk or whatever. But it's just in a more engaging way to do the same work. Virtual reality classrooms. So we have this here at GVSU that they will build for you. They will figure out virtual reality places for you to do things. They will tailor it to you. But if you want to just get in there with your students as even an icebreaker, I would recommend trying out gather.town. It's one of those where you're little characters and all you do is make an account. Gives you a little person, and if you walk up to someone, you can talk to them, but if you walk away, you can't hear them. But if you go to this group, you can hear them. So it's kind of a fun thing, even if you're doing online group work, but you want to pop in on their group discussions. You know, and like you would in a classroom, are they on track? Are they, you know, solving this project the right way, whatever the case may be. But it's all more just engaging things for them, but you're really doing the same thing as you would in that face-to-face classroom. Choice is a big one. I think, I don't know, Justin kind of mentioned you might want to give examples on this or reasons, but I'll start out and you can jump in. The students, they need choices. And then what this bullet point means is maybe they write a paper. Maybe they make a video presentation for 10 minutes. Maybe they have a choice of, do you want to write this paper, 10-page paper? Do you want to do a 10-minute video? Whatever it is that's going to demonstrate mastery and whatever those concepts are that you have for them to do for that assignment or project or paper, whatever it is. Maybe they just do a 5-minute summary on their conclusions, you know, with whatever your assignment content mastery points are for them to do. So it's really giving them a choice based on lifestyle, environment, preferences, learning styles, those kinds of things. So I've seen even 3 different choices in a master's class that I've witnessed as well, where they have 3 different project options that you can do to show your mastery for that class. And it also makes it a little more interesting, I think, for you to grade them. Because I've graded those and had choices, and it is a little more interesting, breaks it up a little bit.
I guess I
But
have
again, yeah, go ahead.
a few examples. So there's a few ways I've seen this done or done it myself. So in the class that I teach, I did this. It's very discussion heavy. It's children and technology. So and it's with a lot of pre-service teachers. So there's a lot to talk about. And I split the discussion in 3 different ways. So a third of the discussion is in person in our hybrid meetings. A third is done through video discussion on Flipgrid. And I specifically tell them those discussions are supposed to be more informal. So they're really time limited too. I only allow them to speak for 2 minutes in their Flipgrid discussions at a time. And then the final third is a more traditional, slightly more formal text-based discussion board. And some of this, is more or less doable based on, your accreditation, things you have to do for accreditation reasons. Because another thing you could do, I worked with a management class where they changed what used to be a 15-page group paper to be that was on the management style of some specific workplace. They changed that to be a mini documentary on the same topic. So they would actually go in, interview the manager, interview some employees at this place, take the B-roll. They got to learn a little bit about film and digital storytelling basically. But ultimately they would accomplish the same thing. And they didn't have to do that. There was a choice given, so they could have wrote the paper, but as you might assume, students find making that video a little more interesting. So when it's possible, based on the expectations that you have for your accreditors, I think choice like that is great. Another one I've seen done is in a speech language pathology class. They could either create a physical representation of how the inner ear worked, or they could do a video representation. The most creative one I saw was this group. They went to a playground and they kind of made an analogy on a playground, how they related different parts of the ear. I don't know enough about how the ear works to explain that to you right now. But so I've seen stuff like that. I've seen criminal justice. I've seen them do, instead of papers or more traditional assessment, they would make little video PSAs or audio PSAs, which I thought was really cool too. So again, it's not always possible. I teach a gen ed class, so I know very, very aware of the things you have to teach for certain gen ed classes. But when it's possible, I think it's good to kind of sprinkle some of that in when you feel like you have that flexibility.
Good, thank you. The last one was just join a student's online group meeting to make sure, well, A, you can see who's participating in their group discussions, and B is answer any questions that they might have if they have any midway through their project or whatever they're doing for group work. So this is where I mentioned you could use gather.town for this to pop in if you had a certain set time for them to work on the group works during it, maybe once a semester. This other one was, I worked with a faculty member they had Zoom meetings where their students would all send to them at the beginning of the semester or week 2, whenever they divide into groups, what their link was that they were going to use for meeting as a group, because this was an online course, could be used for anything, whether it's face-to-face, so students don't have to travel or anything too, or a mix. So anyway, they would send their professor, their instructor, the link and the time each week they were going to meet. So then the instructor could literally pop into any of those sessions, which you can imagine certainly up the ante on participation. But also they can show up to answer any questions, like when they're brainstorming on whatever they want to, fine tune their project, whatever they want to do it on. There's, someone that they can ask questions to as well. So if you're the person that likes to travel around the classroom, if they're doing group work and pop in, answer questions, this is a really good one as well. So I'm just trying to help you envision what you do face-to-face can be done online as well. So student-to-student interaction. So this is going to be this is just a one slide to talk through how to design this in as the instructor. How do you design in so the student-to-student interaction is there as well? Definitely the peer review assignments. I mean, that's been around forever, but that definitely helps if there's a paper writing or anything, as long as they get points for doing the review as well, some kind of reward. We talked a little bit already about the online synchronous chats, referring to not having that be your lecture. We're not meeting to do a lesson. We're meeting to discuss the assignments, what you've seen in the class, if you need to reiterate anything, if they have any questions on the projects, are they, meeting on their projects at all. And then there's partners or groups. Again, you can take a photo of people groups. So this would be student to student if their group went out and they took a picture of something that they could post to the discussion board and then explain why that's in context with whatever your learning was that week. So it's really getting the students to work together for that. And again, anything with images, video, pictures are much more engaging for them in this time that we live in right now with TikTok and everything else and memes. So, and most everyone has a phone. They have a phone with a camera. So that's really fun for different, whether you're doing a science or you're doing a psychology class or whatever. Even math can do this because you can say, hey, we're learning this concept, go out and find something that uses this concept, whatever. Obviously math is everywhere. So, but again, you need to build in the partner or group work. Even online, they definitely can do a group project or a group discussion post, something like that. But another fun one I've seen used is to interview a classmate on something, whatever the content is, to interview each other, because that's building that student to student community feel for them. And I think we talked a little bit already about, like Justin was mentioning, the video discussion responses. I keep moving your faces, sorry, around my slide, my screen. The video discussion responses for each other. So like he was talking about, they did a flip grid so that they're actually doing 2 minutes and commenting on each other's down the row. And then even if you do that in Blackboard, they can do that, whether they do it on their phone and upload it or put it on YouTube and upload it. They know how to do those things as well. Another fun one I've seen is role playing and discussion boards. So whatever field they're going into, whatever our projected careers and jobs, professional roles they'll have, you can develop scenarios on that to fit your week's content, and then have them take different perspectives, argue this point, even if they don't agree with that one, they're assigned that one to argue, then the next week they argue the other one. So that can really build community and really get discussion posts rolling, I can tell you, because they're arguing points. Of course, you want to have them back that up with something research-based, but I think we kind of talked a little bit about this already. The discussion boards, they really get interacting with each other if there's scenarios and things like that, where they can actually choose what they think about or feel about something and back that up somehow with research. And then they just really can get rolling with those conversations. Anything else on this one, Justin, student to student, that we haven't hit, because we only have the slide on the student to student interaction?
I think that's the main thing. I guess another thing, the role play and discussion board, a quick example I can give of that. I took I have my master's in adult and higher education that I did here. And one of the best classes I took in that program was a class where throughout the whole course, we were given roles. So, basically we had to take we had to pretend like we were some administrator at a university, and that the whole course was kind of around that, which I thought was really interesting. So obviously very much depends on your course, but I thought that was a really good idea, and it can be managed pretty easily if you put people in smaller groups, so you don't have to have 30 different roles. You could have 5 roles in 6 different groups or whatever it is.
That's a good, that just reminded me of another one I saw. Someone did in a business leadership course where you were given a role and you stuck with that role the whole semester to really get to know what that job's perspective would be. That the whole semester you're in that role when you're answering anything that has to do with the discussion post. So whether you're the CEO or you're the clerical worker or you're the manager or whatever it is, you all have a different perspective based on that role. So they did that as well but they stuck with it. I think it's fun when you flip them, because you get really passionate, students get really passionate about one week, and then they have to go argue the other side, but they're already sold on this side because that's when they found all that stuff on. So anyway, those are fun in discussion posts and to really get them interacting with each other. And so is any of the VR, those kinds of things. Here's a one that I'm going to introduce that you may not have heard about as being one of the participation interaction critical pieces. So this is student to community. How I preface this is any learning outside of the course content. In other words, whether they're in a hybrid, a face-to-face or online. This could be interviewing somebody in the field, bringing in a guest speaker, an expert, or interviewing somebody with the whole class together in a synchronous manner, or having them listen to somebody who's in the field in a synchronous manner online for a class session. Or are they researching something out in the field that they're bringing back into an assignment? So maybe it's some kind of leadership course, and you send them out to any organization to bring back, whether it's nonprofit or profit, you specify or take both. What are their team trainings there, or whatever it is you're talking about? So they can go out and find this in the community, bring that back. Again, it's building that relevance, the authentic learning for them, which we know is key in research, but also it's getting that community piece involved. It's extending your classroom. So it's that participation piece. So if you have at least one of those, or one component in your semester like that, where they are researching or finding something or experiencing something outside of the classroom learning. This could also be, this could be finding a job post on week 2 that has to do with something in the content they're about to learn. That really builds authentic, relevant learning for them, because it's not just I have to take this and check mark it off so I can get my degree. It's, there's actually jobs that are going to ask me for this, what I'm going to learn. I better pay attention this semester. So even that I would count as community learning, because you're going out looking at a job post. There's a million of them online they can find, but also teaches them how to find job posts. Indeed's a good one, but they can find their own. So anyway, it's involving that community piece. So it's key to have at least one of these in, and a lot of courses already have that without thinking about it, but it's so easy for you to have a guest speaker. I know Justin and I talked about this. We've both done this, to have a guest speaker in our course, in our classes, because they are the experts in the field, and the students can ask real questions to them as well. And it's not just you saying these things, it's somebody else saying, oh yeah, that's a real thing you need to do or learn. So that's involving that community piece. That is the third part, with the fourth being the content interaction. Again, this is kind of just, I've already talked through these ahead of my slide. Another one I've seen too is they just search social media, because we know they're all on there. Doesn't matter which social media. Have them search social media for something covered in your course. I've had them look for resources this way. Find a resource that you could actually use in your field on social media. Is it a group? Is it, a support group kind of thing, in a professional group? So any of that kind of thing, to let them see the relevancy of what they're learning, really, and how they tie that in with their life and professionally. Some of these other ones we already talked through. I kind of jumped around a little bit, but Justin, you want to talk about a couple of these examples at the bottom of this slide, so I'll leave that to you. You have some good ones.
Sure. Yeah. So I definitely, I guess personally in the class that I teach, I'm really big into guest speakers. It's somewhat easy for my class. Children and technology. I have the education director of WGVU come in and talk about PBS and how they design, children's programming, which is a very good one. And then I always also have a teacher panel come in and just talk about how teachers are using technology in the classroom right then and there, which is really good. But that being said, I could see like Karen, for example, on public health. Like I could imagine that there would be experts in your field who, could be relevant depending on your course. That would be relatively easy to bring in. Another way I've seen it done, it doesn't need to be a live thing necessarily. I worked with somebody in department now, occupational therapy, who they wanted to interview someone who had ultimately a terminal disease, I believe, but their condition basically made it so they couldn't physically come to the classroom. So they actually recorded that through Zoom, a little interview about their condition, and how they worked with occupational therapists in the past, and then they were able to, with their permission, obviously, were able to show that to their class. I know they did it in a live in-person session. I'm really big into this, where you show videos in person, but you pause it a lot to kind of provide your context and have a discussion. So I thought that was a really good way to bring community in a maybe a little more approachable way, so you don't have to keep managing people's schedules. But the two examples at the bottom I wanted to give, they're a little bit bigger and more all-encompassing of these courses, but I think one of them is at least a little more attainable. So the Feeding America example I wanted to give, my partner, she actually worked, or she used to work for Feeding America as their grants director. And she partnered with the film and video program here actually. And they have the film and video program has a course called Working with Clients. And what they do is they partner with local nonprofits to create videos for grant opportunities. So my partner Lauren, she partnered with a group from that class, and those students helped Feeding America create a story around some of Feeding America's clients, people who ultimately would go to food pantries, and that was then used in subsequent grant applications. So I thought that was a really great application of how that can be done. The public admin department does that in a bunch of other ways. You know, they have grant writing classes where they're basically giving free grant writing services to smaller nonprofits who don't have their own grant writing departments or couldn't afford grant writing consultants. So I would imagine there's ways to do similar things in all sorts of courses. I mean, I know there's like people from writing in English here, maybe depending on what you teach, obviously, but maybe there's a way to incorporate some of that type of service with, nonprofits that you care about or smaller organizations that you think could benefit from that. Even Shannon, I could see maybe I could see why that could work with movement science stuff you're doing. But then the bigger example I wanted to give is just this trip I used to do to Malawi every 2 years, where I worked with electrical engineering students. And we had a donor who was really passionate about the specific region, and they would donate a pretty considerable amount of money. And what we would do is we would bring a doctor in from rural Malawi in Eastern Africa, and they tell us about their needs. Is all around electrical, around the lack of electricity in their clinics. And this class was on photovoltaics. So what the students would do is they would design these solar powered backup systems for these really remote clinics. And because we had the donor, they were able to design those systems, actually build them. And then we would actually take, I was involved because I was the one who actually took 2 or 3 students. The 2 times we went, one time we took 2 students, one time we took 3. And we actually went there for 10 days, installed them, the whole 9 yards, taught the local tradespeople how they were built, how to, service them, everything. So that whole class was basically around, how this content connects to the community, which is really great. So obviously it's a little bit, further out there, but I think, there's a range of ways in which you can do this. I think a lot of you are probably already doing this in, very, very different ways. So just being a little more cognizant of it, I think can help sometimes.
Thank you. I wanted you to share the bigger what it could go to. You can do it in little areas, but it can be big if you got something that you're passionate about as well, that you could link them together. Thank you. So just a quick wrap up of the main pieces is, student engagement definitely is needed for student achievement and their success. So we want to have things that are engaging for them to do, but not just for the sake of, here's a fun, cool tech way to do something, but as a replacement for something you would do in person, but still serves the same purpose, and shows the same content mastery, those kinds of things. Be creative and offer a variety of online activities. That definitely seems to increase engagement, whether they're doing pictures or interviews or whatever. And social presence is the key part for you is your social presence in the course, so that you are present, they have a relationship with you. So if they have a question, they're not going to their advisor if it's about your course, or they're not going to the program director because they knew them from another course. They're coming to you with a question on your course, which that's where that social presence, building that relationship comes in. And whether it's online, hybrid, or in person, you can do that with the things that we talk through. But yeah, I think getting the 3 main types, we already know they're in the content. So the other 3 types, which are the student to faculty, student to student, and student to community pieces into the course. So I would love, as our quick wrap up here, is there something you heard today that you could share? Just even one thing from each of you that you would like to maybe make a difference in your class, or create something, whether we help you with it or not, is it a pie in the sky or not, but what did you take from today that you would like to add or change in your course?
For me, I think I want to try to find a way to reach out more on a weekly basis, perhaps doing that weekly video you mentioned. I have done some videos. I have instructional videos for different units that I teach, but I did do a welcome aboard video in the beginning of the semester, but it might be helpful to do a quick 3-minute video or 4-minute video that kind of captures what happens in the week.
Yeah.
That I could send out like on Sunday or something.
Yeah, I think
Great.
Julie, that's one thing I'm always talking to faculty about is just getting in the schedule. So in my class, my weeks start on Monday. I send out an announcement on Monday. About half the time it probably has a video in it. Just depends. My class is hybrid, so I see them a third of the time, so I don't feel it's as necessary. And then I also always send out an announcement on Thursday, and if they have a major assignment due, I schedule one to be sent out on Saturday. So I'm really consistent about that.
I was wondering if I could pick the brain of the people that are here, and Vince especially too, because he's, I've worked with him before regarding online materials. What do you do about students that are just kind of falling off? They're not turning things in. I've been trying email, hey, I can still give you full credit. I try not to make it a punitive thing where if you turn it in, you're going to lose points, that kind of thing. So I'm just wondering if you have any suggestions for me to help with those kind of issues.
I think for me, it's being very clear up front, what your expectations are. That's key, number one. And then following up, to a reasonable degree. So, I will always follow up, I'll follow up once, and then if someone doesn't get back to me, I typically would email them again on that same chain 4 days later. Another thing I should say too, I tend not to actually email students out of Blackboard because I don't like how it just BCCs people on things, and it makes it difficult to kind of track that. So I do email people directly out of my email. But then I'll respond back to them, after 5 days if they don't get back to me. And then same thing again, if they miss another major assignment, I'll get back, I'll do the same thing. But and then there is that, Vince, you might have to fill me in. I can't remember the name of that new system that we're supposed to be reporting. These
like the Navigate, I think
yes,
it's called Navigate.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, I'm
Navigate.
getting ready to send out some reports.
Yeah.
I thought I'd give one more week, like week 3, but I have some that either haven't shown up at all or showed up, but they're not turning in any work. So they show up every week for the synchronous, but then they don't do any of the coursework. And I tried to, because they're freshmen mainly, I tried to explain that this class is that work that you're doing is the coursework. It's not homework for the one time you see me 50 minutes a week, right? It's like the 3 hours of coursework and then so that they understand it's not homework. That's something that they can just do when they get to. They have to do it in order to understand the coursework. But I don't know if it's all the different platforms, but I seem to be having a lot more struggle this year with students getting on board with the work than I did last year. It seems like I just sent a few follow-up emails and students just caught up. But this year, I don't know if it's because they have face-to-face, hybrid, high flex, online. I don't know if it's too many platforms or what.
That's a good question.
Do you check the in Blackboard, you can actually see the last time they logged into your specific course? Is that something you're checking? Okay, good. That's another piece of information that's always just good to have. And I'll tend to, for students like the ones you're suggesting, I'll tend to even like throw out that I know that. So like I've had a student last semester, who didn't log in for like 2 weeks, and I'll even say, hey, I saw you haven't checked in, you haven't logged into our course in 2 weeks, and go from there. Just so students know that that's a thing, I'm not trying to use it in a punitive way, but just to show them, I'm attentive, like, I'm trying to help you out here.
You're noticing.
Yeah,
that's, so I have 2 answers for you too. Well, one suggestion, one answer. I do the same thing, I think, as Justin, where I'll check in by email if I notice they've missed something like an assignment piece. And then I do follow up a few days later, give it, 4 or 5 days, and I follow up again. So I'm still within that week where they could turn it in. but it is establishing up front. It's in my syllabus. I talk through that the first, whenever we meet. This I usually always do week 2 of the course. We have a get together thing online just to talk through those kinds of specifics that if you talk to me in advance, then I can help you with something late. Otherwise, then you're going to be penalized if you don't tell me that it's coming late. So, but again, you don't have to penalize them. I just want to reiterate that, just like Justin said, that to set that up front. The other thing I wanted to say was, you're dealing with freshmen who may never have had an online course, but even when I deal with graduate students who may never have done an online course, a fully online course, I recommend a 5-minute navigation video where you actually do a screen capture and show where the things are in your Blackboard course and what your expectations are for them to be doing each week. It's just like a walkthrough, and it doesn't have to be long. It's once, and you just put in the first week. But it's really like, okay, this is what I want you to be clicking on and reading and doing. And this is where you find things. Just a navigation video that's a short one, but then you're talking through it while you're showing your screen. That would be very helpful, I think, for really any level, but especially the freshman level. I would think that, because honestly, what people had last year as an online course may not be a legit online course, like we would say, because it was triage. So if they were still in high school, who knows what that looked like. And they just really may not be aware of how to navigate and navigate the expectations as well as the course of a fully online course. That was a great question.
I would say, Julie, too, I would encourage you to survey your students. In online courses, I tend to survey my students each third of the course. I think it's even more important right now after everyone's gone through for the last year and a half, 2 years, whatever. So one thing that's difficult from like the perspective of Kelley and Vince and myself is this idea of a synchronous online class. It existed in certain ways pre-pandemic, but certainly not anywhere to the level it did now. And the reason it didn't was because from our perspective, one of the biggest advantages of online classes is that you can do it anywhere. There's no time, it's an asynchronous experience, or a relatively asynchronous experience. So this idea of the synchronous online class was kind of problematic in like the e-learning circles, because it really got rid of the big advantage of online courses. So I'm not saying there's like research on this or anything yet, but I think I'm very interested to see how many synchronous online classes exist, in whenever the future is of, post-pandemic life, just because of that fact, because it does get rid of what we see as the big advantage, and what a lot of definitely adult learners would see as a big advantage.
For sure.
But it's not to say that it didn't exist. Like in Shannon's case, teaching, yoga is largely going to be a synchronous online class, right? And they existed at Grand Valley just in very, very small numbers, and mostly in graduate courses. Right. There was only really a handful of synchronous online classes pre-pandemic, and to my knowledge, they were all graduate classes. So I would survey your students on that, like if they find that a valuable experience or not.
Anyone else on what did you hear today that we talked through that you'd like to add to your course? Any one item?
I thought a couple interesting things. So I'll just say I'm intrigued by this virtual reality classroom. Mm-hmm. I'm always looking for ways to engage them. And I also would like to try the assignment options. I think that might be good. I teach all graduate classes. And what we have found across our program, I always do a quick navigation video like you talked about. Good. And obviously I do recorded lectures every week for my hybrid classes. But what we have found is they are inundated with video. And you know how you can go to Panopto and see who's watching and things like that? Yeah. They're just not watching. I do instructional videos, and they're not watching. So I stopped doing them, and I can't say I blame them. There's just so much time in front of the screen, So I go back and forth, and if something's really, really important that what, obviously I would still do it, but I've kind of gotten away from that. And I just want to make one comment about the synchronous online classroom. I've been teaching for over 20 years. That is the most difficult teaching I have ever done.
Oh, yes.
I have done so many different things and I do ask them regularly, is this working for you guys? Is there something you'd rather? Because I don't know, maybe there's something I'm not thinking of. And I have fought against the synchronous online class. I didn't win, but I did fight against it. So yeah.
You could try a quiz maybe in Panopto. You can throw in a couple questions in your videos to make sure they're getting it. You can call it extra credit or whatever, but might motivate them to watch it. Who knows?
Yeah. I was going to say, Karen, just making sure that I agree. I think, over the last 18 months, like the amount of watch time, generally speaking, screen time people have had is shockingly high. People are very cognizant of that for sure. So I think, make it things I've said always in the past, like make things as short and concise as possible. And make sure it's truly tied to your learning objectives ultimately, which I'm sure you're all doing, but, try to get rid of all those superfluous, information that you can without, compromising, what you're trying to teach in the course.
For lectures, I always recommend 10-minute chunks, because with PowerPoints or things, you can chunk it right in sections. So they'll listen to them more. Because if you say, watch this 10-minute video, it's different than watch this video. You're like, how long is this going to be?
Right. No, I do. They're divided up. I have lecture notes that are for each, and then there's a short little something at the end of each of those as well. So I think this week I have 4.
Yep.
Chunky little things. So yeah.
That's good. Shannon, you had something you're going to say. I could see you.
Just really briefly. So I teach right now, my online class is Pilates. I also teach yoga, but it's for movement science. It's a 1-credit fit class. But something that I hadn't considered before, it's synchronous online, this Pilates class, is letting them hear from people other than me. And I really liked that idea. Pilates started as something that was very rehabilitative. So I think I could source videos or talk to people and just pull my class and see, what do they want to get out of Pilates? And if somebody plays a sport and wants to know how Pilates can benefit that sport, I could look for a video or talk to somebody I know who has practiced Pilates and it's made an impact or a difference in that sport. So just letting them hear from people other than just me hadn't occurred to me before. So I like it.
I love that with a sport tie-in. That's great for anybody to hear.
I got to run in just 1 minute to another meeting, but I'm a big fan of like getting students involved in like designing at least one assignment per course. So in the class I teach, I have one assignment that it is like roughly skeletoned out, but like realistically, I can change the content of it pretty easily. And I always like in an in-person session, I'll get my students together and say, okay, what do you guys want to write about? And we'll kind of like roughly together in real time write out like what the sections of that assignment should look like or what they want. They always really appreciate that. I always get a comment about that on my feedback for sure.
Cool. That's a good idea. Thank you, Justin. I'll just wrap up here with our resources and call it a day. So I wanted to just quick put this, if you want to write anything down, if you want any of these ideas and we can help you work through these ideas. If you just come to us and say, hey, I do this activity or this assignment, how do you see that I should do this differently? Or how could I make it more engaging? Then we would love to help you with that. So I just want to put these here. And if you get to the website, even for eLearn, you can find other professional development things, but also tools, resources. And if you ever want to reach anyone in eLearning, you can just send a message to IT at GVSU, because we're now our team is divided into different like colleges and areas so that you start to get to know the different faculty that we're working with. So we're working on set one. So we will direct you to that eLearning person in your area. And I just have the last one this is Justin and my personal email. And we thank you guys for coming and listening. And I'm thanking you for Justin as well, because he feels the same, I'm sure. So I appreciate you guys. I will send out the link. Stop the recording, but I am going to send out the link to you guys on this. So if there's anything you want to go back and look at for ideas or to catch something or send to somebody else, and you'll be able to do that as well. So thanks so much. I appreciate you guys.